The first time General Korgul saw Quentin Zane, the human was sitting cross-legged in the middle of a crater, his arms tied behind his back with what looked like a shredded parachute cord. Smoke curled skyward from the wreckage of what had once been a Terran drop pod. The surrounding ground was scorched, glassy from the heat of impact. A dozen of Korgul's soldiers flanked the human, plasma rifles trained steadily on him. Korgul descended from his command carrier, the sleek black armor of his warframe reflecting the orange glow of the burning debris. His heavy boots crunched the cracked soil as he approached. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Grell, stepped forward and saluted. He was the only one aboard. No weapons, no implants, no exosuit. Just him. Korgul eyed the human. Quentin glanced up, blinking soot from his eyes. "You look like hell," Quentin said. Korgul tilted his head. "You are unarmed. Alone. You crashed into a secure war zone. And you jest." Quentin shifted, wincing as his left side tensed. "I'm not joking. I just don't want to pass out before meeting whoever's in charge. I am General Korgul of the Threx Dominion," Korgul said, stepping closer. "I command the Eastern Sky Front and 16 million troops. Who authorized your descent?" "No one," Quentin said. "I volunteered." Korgul stared at him. "You volunteered to be captured?" "No," Quentin said. "I volunteered to end this war." Korgul's soldiers stiffened. Grell lowered his rifle slightly. "I don't see a weapon," Korgul said. "I didn't bring one. I could crush your spine with one hand." "You could," Quentin said. "But that wouldn't change anything. You'd just be the guy who killed an unarmed human trying to talk." Korgul's gaze lingered on him. "You are not armed. You are not enhanced. You are not even afraid. What are you?" "Quentin Zane," he said. "I used to teach physics at a high school in Nebraska." Korgul turned. "Bring him." Two soldiers hauled Quentin to his feet. He grunted as his ribs protested. They dragged him into the command carrier, locking him in a reinforced observation cell with clear walls. Korgul stood outside, arms folded. "You claim to have come to talk. Yet you brought no data, no terms, no diplomatic credentials." "I brought me," Quentin said. "That's the only leverage I've got." Korgul narrowed his eyes. "You are wasting my time." Quentin leaned back against the wall, breathing shallowly. "Then let me prove I'm not." Korgul exhaled through his respirator. "How?" "Challenge me. Not to a fight yet. To a test. Any test. Pick something that proves your people's superiority. I'll take it. No tricks." Korgul considered. "If you fail, you die." "Fair." The next morning, Quentin stood at the edge of a cliff carved into the side of Threx's third moon. Below, a maze sprawled across a half-mile of jagged terrain. It had been used to train Threx assassins for generations. The course was riddled with traps, false paths, and motion-triggered sentry drones. "No map, no guidance," Korgul said. "You have 1 hour. Make it to the tower in the center. Or don't." Quentin looked down at his bare hands, then at the maze. "Cool," he said. "Any chance I can stretch first?" Korgul didn't respond. The horn sounded. Quentin sprinted off the ledge, landing hard on the first platform. Pain shot up his left leg, his ankle rolled, but didn't snap. He gritted his teeth and pushed forward. The first corridor sloped downward into darkness. He kept low, eyes scanning for pressure plates. Something hissed. He dove just as a jet of searing gas shot overhead, singing off part of his shirt. He rolled and kept running. Back in the command carrier, Korgul watched on the monitors, arms folded. "He will not survive 20 minutes, Grell muttered. Korgul didn't answer. Quentin ducked under a swinging blade, stumbled into a pit, and climbed out using a cracked panel. Sweat soaked his shirt. He was breathing hard now, every muscle screaming. His ribs ached from the crash, and he was sure his ankle was swelling. But the tower was getting closer. 53 minutes in, he reached the final chamber. A 10-foot wall stood between him and the stairs. He backed up, ran, and leapt. His fingers caught the ledge. He slipped once, then got a better grip and hauled himself up, groaning. His shoulder popped. He didn't stop. He limped to the top of the tower and collapsed. The timer stopped at 59 minutes and 41 seconds. Korgul entered the chamber 20 minutes later. Quentin was sitting up, holding his side. "You made it." "Barely." "You are injured." "Yeah. I'm going to need a compression wrap and probably some ice." Korgul stared at him. "Why did you not quit?" Quentin looked up, face pale. "Because if I had, you wouldn't be standing here talking to me." Korgul didn't answer. That night, They put him in a medical bay. The Threx scanners showed 2 cracked ribs, a partially torn shoulder tendon, and a mildly sprained ankle. He was put on painkillers and told to rest 48 hours. Quentin slept for 20 of them. When he woke, Korgul was sitting in a chair outside the recovery room. You should not have completed that maze. Quentin sat up slowly. I know. No human has done it. Probably because most humans aren't dumb enough to try. You risked your life for a conversation. I'm still risking it. Korgul stood. I do not understand your species. Quentin shrugged. We don't either. That's kind of the problem. 3 days later, Korgul returned. This time, he brought a challenge of his own. A duel, he said. 1-on-1. No weapons. You say you came to end the war. If you defeat me in single combat, I will call for ceasefire negotiations. Quentin stared at him. You're serious? I am. I'm still recovering. You have 5 days. Quentin trained with a Threx medic who used to be a martial artist. At first, Quentin could barely lift his arm. But the medic taught him leverage, balance, how to use an opponent's mass. They wrapped his ribs with stabilizers and iced his ankle every night. By the 5th day, he could move without wincing. The arena was open air, surrounded by a crowd of Threx officers and soldiers. Korgul wore only a tunic, his armor set aside. Quentin wore reinforced cloth and a knee brace. The crowd went silent. Korgul stepped into the ring. Last chance to back out. Quentin tightened his brace. Let's go. The bell rang. Korgul lunged. Quentin ducked, rolled, and came up behind him. Korgul spun, swinging wide. Quentin sidestepped, grabbed his arm, and twisted. Korgul broke the hold and elbowed him in the chest. Quentin hit the ground, coughing. He got up. Korgul came again, faster. Quentin blocked one strike, dodged another, then caught Korgul's leg with his own and pulled. Korgul stumbled. Quentin drove his shoulder into Korgul's side, pushing him back. The impact jarred his ribs. He gasped. Korgul grabbed him by the throat and lifted. Quentin kicked, twisting, and jabbed a thumb into Korgul's eye. Korgul dropped him. Quentin staggered back, fist up. Blood dripped from his nose. Korgul charged. Quentin sidestepped, grabbed the back of Korgul's tunic, and used his own momentum to flip him over his shoulder. Korgul hit the ground. Silence. Quentin dropped to his knees. Korgul sat up slowly. The crowd waited. Korgul stood, rubbing his shoulder. He walked to Quentin and extended his hand. Quentin took it. Korgul helped him up. The war ends today, Korgul said. You have earned that. Quentin nodded. Thanks. Then he passed out. He woke up 2 hours later in the med bay, arm in a sling, ribs fully wrapped, nose set with a splint. The war ended the next morning. And for the rest of his life, General Korgul never again challenged a human without a weapon. The room Quentin woke in this time was quieter, colder. Not a mebe, not quite a cell. A transitional space, bare metal walls, a single cot, and a table bolted to the floor. No windows. Just a long horizontal slit in the door where food trays could slide through. Someone had left a folded gray tunic and a pair of alien-made sandals on the edge of the bed, neatly arranged as though expecting a guest rather than housing a patient. He sat up slowly, testing the limits of his body. The brace was gone from his knee, replaced by a pressurized wrap that hissed faintly with each movement. The rib bandage had been reinforced with a lattice of some kind of flexible polymer. His shoulder still hurt, but less. The nose cast had been replaced by a thinner strip of gel that chilled his skin. He ran his hand through his hair and sighed. I really should have stayed a teacher. The door opened without warning. No hiss, no sound at all, just a click and a shift, like a vacuum seal releasing. Korgul entered, followed by a smaller Threx with a narrow, angular head and deep indigo skin. The second figure carried a flat rectangular device and wore no armor, just a layered robe with glowing seams. You look better, Korgul said, staring at him with unreadable eyes. Everything hurts less, which is probably as good as it's gonna get. This is Vren, Korgul said. He's not military. The alien nodded once and tapped the device. A soft humming filled the room. No translators, Vren said. No comms. This field blocks everything short of kinetic force. Now we can speak freely. Quentin rubbed his temples. That doesn't sound ominous at all. You embarrassed my command staff, Korgul said. They're demanding explanations. Some think you're modified. Others believe you're a decoy. A few think you're a weapon disguised as a man. Well, I'm definitely not a decoy, Quentin said. I bruise too easily for that. Vren stepped forward. You understand the implications of what you did. I figured it might get me a second conversation, Quentin said. Didn't think it'd get me locked in a vacuum-sealed shoebox. You altered military doctrine, Vren said. By accident. Quentin blinked. What? Threx warriors don't take prisoners. You weren't just captured, you were tested, and then you survived. That's a cultural anomaly. Now the Doctrine Committee is rewriting capture protocols. They've even added a clause, Zane contingency. You're joking. We don't joke, Korgul said flatly. You've caused a bureaucratic rupture. I didn't mean to rupture anything. Intent is irrelevant, Vren said. You altered the psychological calculus of surrender scenarios. That hasn't happened in 200 cycles. Quentin leaned back against the wall. I just wanted to talk. You have a gift for escalation through inaction, Korgul muttered. I'm very talented at upsetting people by doing nothing. Ask my ex-wife. Vren ignored that. Your biology has also caused confusion. You burn through pain suppressants at triple the expected metabolic rate. Your muscles retain damage longer than ours, yet you function with alarming range. And your neural scans show no stress bifurcation. I don't know what that means. It means, Korgul said, you don't break the way you should. Quentin shrugged carefully. We're used to pain. It's kind of a national hobby back home. Vren sat across from him at the table. We want to understand the mechanism. What allows a human to endure such strain and maintain cohesion? Well, we're not designed for it, Quentin said. We just get really good at pretending we're fine until we keel over. Korgul glanced at Vren. He's not being evasive. That's genuinely the answer. Vren stood. I need to report this. Korgul didn't move. Leave the field active. Vren hesitated, then tapped the device again and left. Once the door sealed, Quentin rubbed the bridge of his nose. So, what now? You going to dissect me for policy reform? You convinced a war council to halt operations without firing a shot. That impressed some. Alarmed others. Which side are you on? I'm still deciding. Quentin grinned faintly. Well, if you're basing it on how often I bleed, you should know there's more where that came from. Korgul paced the room once. You said you volunteered. That implies there was an alternative. What was it? Sending diplomats, advisors, people with titles. And you believed you were better suited. I believed I was expendable, Quentin said. The others, they had roles. Families. I had tenure and a studio apartment with a broken radiator. No one misses a high school teacher. Korgul stopped. You're wrong. About the radiator? About being missed. Quentin tilted his head. Are you trying to be nice? I'm trying not to regret sparing you. Too late. The silence that followed wasn't hostile. Just thick with everything unsaid. Korgul finally Saturday, you're not a warrior. Not a spy. Yet you changed the outcome of a planetary siege in under a week. Quentin nodded. Yeah, I'm as surprised as you are. Korgul stared at him. What do you want now? Honestly? A sandwich. And maybe a chair that doesn't make my spine feel like it's dissolving. Korgul stood again. You'll have both. But tomorrow, you'll address the council. That sounds terrifying. You've been terrifying them for days. Might as well do it in person. They brought him to a different chamber the next morning. Not a courtroom, more like a theater carved into a basalt cliff, with tiered seating and a central platform surrounded by a translucent barrier. Dozens of Threx officials watched him from above, their robes shimmering in the ambient light. Korgul stood to his left. Vren was nowhere in sight. A voice from above said, State your designation and intent. Quentin Zane. Intent, not dying. A ripple of murmurs moved through the chamber. Another voice. You disabled one of our elite. You completed a restricted training gauntlet. Then you defeated a ranking general in single combat. What is your objective? I want the fighting to stop, Quentin said. Not for glory. Not for leverage. Just because I'm tired of people getting hurt. You represent no government. You carry no treaty. I carry bruises, Quentin said. I brought my body. That's all I had to offer. A silence fell. Then another voice. You're not what we expected. Neither were you, Quentin said. But here we are. Korgul didn't say anything, but he didn't need to. After the proceedings, they brought him back to the room. This time, someone had left a tray with food. He didn't recognize any of it, but one thing had layers and smelled vaguely of roasted vegetables. He ate slowly, cautiously. Nothing exploded or paralyzed him, which he took as a win. Later that evening, Korgul returned alone. The council deliberated. And, they're sending a delegation to your people. A formal one. Quentin exhaled. Good. They want you to go with them. He blinked. Me. You're now classified as a diplomatic variable. They want to see what happens when you're introduced to their counterparts. Quentin scratched the back of his head. So I'm a science experiment. An experiment with authorization codes and a seat at the table. He sat back on the cot. Weirdest promotion I've ever gotten. You're not done, Korgul said. You're just beginning. Well, Quentin said, I guess I better start packing. You'll need new clothes. Let's start with pants that don't try to fuse to my legs. Korgul almost looked amused. And for the first time since he'd crashed onto a hostile moon, Quentin didn't feel like an intruder. He felt like a ripple, one that had just begun to spread. The delegation ship wasn't built for comfort. It was built for diplomatic optics, sleek, wide corridors, polished obsidian panels, and a complete absence of anything that could be mistaken for softness. Quentin sat in the observation room, which, despite its name, had no windows. Instead, the walls projected a slow, looping exterior view of the star's cape, as if to reassure anyone inside that they were still moving through space and not locked in a very expensive basement. He leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, watching a simulated comet drift past. The pain in his ribs was mostly gone now, though deep breaths still made his side feel like a rusted hinge. The Threx medical team had administered another round of the protein gel that accelerated bone knitting, but only after explaining that too much use could cause the bones to fuse unevenly. They'd said it with the same tone someone might use to warn against overcooking fish. Korgul entered without knocking. He didn't wear armor now, just a long functional coat with dark sigils down the sleeves, something between ceremonial and practical. I thought I was supposed to rest before we docked, Quentin said. You've been sitting in here for 3 hours. I'm trying to look contemplative. It's a diplomatic tactic. Makes people think I've got secret knowledge. Do you? Only about substitute teaching during flu season. Doesn't come up much in interstellar politics. Korgul remained standing. They've assigned seating for the talks. You'll be positioned between the Eldrazi translator and the Terran liaison. Do not speak unless addressed. I'm not entirely sure I'm capable of that. You'll make the effort. Quentin stood and stretched carefully. What are the odds this actually works? Realistically, there are factions who see you as a symbol of recklessness. Others see you as proof of adaptability. If you say something foolish, both sides will have validation. Well, that's comforting. Korgul stepped aside, gesturing toward the corridor. Walk with me. They moved through the quiet halls, passing maintenance drones and a pair of Threx messengers who bowed slightly as they passed. Quentin noticed their eyes flick to him, then away again. You know they think I'm some kind of anomaly, right? He said. You are. I'm not a diplomat. I was underqualified to run the PDA back home. You survived conditions that would incapacitate most soldiers. You alter the course of a war through endurance and timing. You're dangerous precisely because you don't approach conflict the way we do. That's not strategy. That's desperation. Desperation is powerful when refined. They reached the central chamber. The doors opened with a low hum, revealing a wide circular room with layered seating. Representatives from 7 species were already present, seated in clusters. The humans sat at the far side, dressed in formal Navy uniforms with subtle gold badges. Quentin recognized none of them. He hesitated. Korgul placed a hand on his shoulder, not forceful, not reassuring. Just wait. Do not attempt to solve anything, Korgul said. Your presence is the solution. The talks began without ceremony. The Eldrazi translator opened by reciting the terms of the ceasefire in a slow cadence that made Quentin's skin itch. The Terran liaison, a woman named Dr. Rhea Monroe, nodded politely at each clause, her expression unreadable. When they reached the dispute over mining rights on the border moons, the room grew tense. A representative from the Jexari Confederation accused the humans of deploying sensor jammers. The humans denied it. The Threx remained silent. Quentin sipped the water they'd left for him, though it tasted faintly like mint and metal. Then the Eldrazi paused. The human variable may speak. Quentin blinked. I'm sorry. The what? The designation assigned to your presence. That's not ominous at all. Dr. Monroe leaned slightly toward him. Keep it short. Quentin cleared his throat. I don't know anything about mining rights. I don't know how your scanners work or who's jamming what. But I do know that if you keep arguing like this, it's just going to spiral back into fighting. And I didn't come out here, crash into a crater, and get half my bones realigned so you could all start shooting again over rocks. The chamber was silent. Then the Jexari representative leaned forward. You entered a war zone alone. For dialogue. Yeah, Quentin said. I'm not saying it was smart. Your species tolerates that kind of risk? We don't tolerate it. We survive it. Then we write long books about why it was someone else's fault. The Threx envoy let out a low breath that might have been amusement. The Eldrazi spoke again. Observation registered. Proceed with Item 7. The rest of the session passed without interruption. When it ended, the various delegates filed out, some nodding to him, some avoiding his gaze entirely. Outside the chamber, Dr. Monroe caught up with him. You're the one who fought General Korgul. I prefer the phrase didn't die immediately. They didn't tell us you were going to be here. Good. I wasn't prepared either. She studied him. You're not what we expected. Yeah, I hear that a lot. Later, back in his assigned quarters, Quentin lay on a bed that adjusted itself to his spinal alignment every time he shifted. It was deeply unsettling. He eventually ended up sleeping on the floor with a folded blanket under his head. By the following morning, word had spread. Several Jexari diplomats requested a private meeting. They wanted to understand the human capacity for what they called non-lethal confrontation ritualism. Quentin found himself explaining high school debate teams and protest marches. One of them took notes furiously. The next day, 3 Eldrazi requested a demonstration of pain-managed conflict recovery. Quentin declined but offered to show them a series of stretches and breathing techniques he'd used during physical therapy. They recorded the entire session. Before departure, Korgul found him in the meal chamber, examining a plate of translucent cubes that trembled when touched. You're becoming a curiosity, Korgul said. I think I've become a wellness trend. They'll study you. Copy your patterns. Try to replicate your effect. They'll be disappointed. I'm not replicable. You're not, Korgul agreed. You're a reminder. Of what? That unpredictability is not always weakness. Quentin picked up one of the cubes and poked it with a fork. It jiggled unconvincingly. Still not sure I should eat this. It's mostly protein and a mild neural relaxant. Oh, good. Dessert that makes me docile. You've already done more damage than any weapon we've deployed this cycle. Eat the cube. He did. It wasn't bad. When they landed back on Earth, Quentin was escorted down the ramp by 2 Threx officials and handed off to a human envoy who looked like he hadn't slept in days. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted. Someone tried to hand him a medal. He declined. He gave a single interview, in which he said, I didn't win anything. I just ran out of reasons to stay quiet. Then he went home. Back in Nebraska, the school had replaced him. His apartment lease had expired, so he rented a small cabin near the edge of town, surrounded by pine trees and silence. One afternoon, a package arrived with no return address. Inside was a single cube of translucent food and a note. Unpredictability is not always weakness. He laughed harder than he had in weeks. And he didn't eat the cube. He just let it sit on the shelf, gently vibrating with the afternoon sun.